All right, here we go. We're having an interview with the illustrious Andy Neuman,
Yep.
and we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about your business. And so, fantastic, man. Thanks for joining me on this.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so you've been doing business for quite a while here in Florida, in
Yeah.
Brevard County. You serve Brevard and also Orange County, right?
Yes. So obviously, I've been in the industry since 2010.
Mm-hmm.
I started in real estate at that time with Prudential Sterling Properties, which actually Prudential Real Estate got bought out by Berkshire Hathaway Florida Realty. And so I've been in that industry since that time, and I love it here. It's been great, and we've seen a lot of changes throughout the industry.
So that's pretty cool. 2010, that was still during the crash. What?
That is.
Wow, that you got in at the right time, huh?
I sure did. I sure
Pressure
did.
points.
Yep.
Nothing
Yep.
like pressure at that
It
point.
was a very interesting market at the time, and we actually, went through some challenges,
Mm-hmm.
through some hardship, and there was no one that actually was there as a coach to coach me through the whole process in the beginning. So I was basically trying all kinds of marketing tools to see what works and what didn't work. But then you get to know what really works for you and you stick to it, and consistency is the key with that.
I bet that's pretty amazing. So tell me a little bit. What do you enjoy the most about since 2010? You've seen a lot of ups and downs in the market, kind of in a little stabilizing. Market's changing a little bit again. What do you enjoy the most about working with your clients, or you actually refer to them as family members? So.
Exactly. So I treat all my clients as a family member. I actually treat them, when they're purchasing properties from me, I treat their money as it's my money. So I'm making sure that they're getting the greatest deal that they can get out there as if I'm buying the property myself. So they feel that when my clients are buying properties, that, you know, I'm looking at their best interest. It's not about me, it's about my clients.
So that's pretty. That brings in the next question because building strong relationships is a big deal, and I've seen you in action doing this. We've worked together quite a bit.
Exactly.
And what do you think the secret is to establishing some of these relationships? How do you build the trust?
Well, the build the trust is actually number one, be very transparent, being able to um, do what you say you're going to do. And then with every customers that I work with, they want to know what you have done for other customers so that they know that you're going to do the same great deals for them. So over a long period of time, we get to know each other on a personal level. I try to get to know my customers, what they like, what they do, and number one, listen. I found out that listening to what your customer wants and needs are very important so that you can build that trust with them.
That's a really good point right there. I think a lot of people just try to shove people into a box and kind of get them closed right away because it's a transaction for them. But it sounds like for you, this is a huge deal of maintaining strong relationships with people long term.
Exactly, because one thing is that I like real estate is all about building relationship because my business is based on referrals. For every one referral, one closing I do, I expect to get two referrals from that customers. And the only way you're going to get that referral base is if you take care of those clients of yours, my family members. Because whenever I sell, a great example would be I got a referral from another real estate agent out of Connecticut, brought a client down, client bought the house, loved the area, showed them the area, and make sure that they got the best deal they can get for the property they were buying. And once they purchased the property, they invited their friends who were actually neighbors out of Connecticut. They came down, they looked at the property, they looked at where they live, and they said, "Man, we should stop shoveling snow and come to Florida." Well, guess what? They referred me to their neighbors, and within 2 months later, that neighbor bought a property in the same area as where my first client bought the property. So, based on that, I have a very good relationship with all of my clients that I sell to.
So I want to ask a little bit more about that because you just said that you expect two transactions out of every single one that you make. So if I'm hearing you correctly, then you're working, trying to build trust throughout the process. And What kind of story can you share where your relationship with one of these clients or referral partners actually made a difference?
Yeah. So speaking about the referral part is how do we get the clients to pass on referrals, and how do I ask for those referrals? Um, when you go into a contract, it doesn't stop there. We're actually negotiating through the whole process. What I mean by that is we're actually negotiating through the process of inspection. Then we negotiate through the process of appraisal if the property appraises or not. Then we negotiate through some of the terms. And then we go to the closing table. So when you go through those process, first of all, when I get them on the contract, that's the number one time that I ask them, saying, "Congratulations, glad you got the home. Are you happy with the way the process went?" And obviously, they're going to tell you yes. So then I say, "Do you know anyone you feel comfortable with that you can introduce me to that we can help them find a home just like the one you just purchased?" Maybe they have one, maybe they don't. We go through the inspection stage. After we finish inspection, if there's negotiation or not, then you ask them for the second time. And then when you go to the closing table, you ask them again. And you ask them the same questions, and they might say, "Hey, by the way, I am so happy. I do have a colleague of mine that's looking to purchase. We just had a conversation." And they just say, "Okay, well, here's a contact and name, and you can uh, reach out to them and contact them." And that's the number one way of me getting the referral. Another way is after closing, if you haven't even get one, then you basically what you do is you stop by, give them something of value, and then you ask them for the referral. Most of the time, they'll get that referral because someone came to their house as a housewarming party. As a realtor, you can also support the housewarming party, and then they introduce you to their friends, and then they start talking about real estate, and then you get their contact information, and there you got another deal. So yeah, a lot of my business is based on referrals of past clients, sphere of influence.
That's interesting. So here we are. This is Chris of the Parks Mortgage Group. You can see we've got a lot of great tidbits here from Randy, who's going to be sharing a little bit more. So you're going to want to stay all the way to the end
Yeah,
because we're just getting warmed up on some of the
that's
stuff.
right.
And Randy's got some really good stuff. I
Thank you,
want to
Chris.
drill down on something that you mentioned because we see that, and this actually plays into the next question. What trends are you noticing in the industry that could benefit your clients, and especially the ones that work with you? We talked a little bit off camera about this, about negotiating, because that seems to be one of the big deals right now.
Yeah, so one of the things that we're seeing is um, obviously after the NAR lawsuit that took place, what you're going to see now is you're going to get a lot of professionals that are going to be in the real estate market. What we mean by that is a lot of people that go under contract, what we call immature realtors, they tend to make a deal, and a lot of those deals get canceled. And the reason why they get canceled is because one party or the other does not come into an agreement. And what happens is they want to start over because they don't want to deal with the situation. When you work with a professional like me, is we try to solve the problem. So we want to go out and say, okay, here's the situation. How are we going to solve this problem? What can we do to make this deal work? And it has to come from both sides of the parties. So, as a professional, you're going to have to be able to negotiate, and this is where negotiation strategies come into place, where you're going to say, okay, well, in order to make this thing work, this is what we would need to make it work. Would that be possible with you? And you'll have to negotiate with the other party as well. And then when both party comes to meeting of the minds, then the deal gets solved and we continue going to the closing table. So yeah, that's what you're seeing with professional real estate agents like me, and others. There are some professionals out there that are able to negotiate to make the deals happen, because not every deal is going to be a smooth deal. So to make it a smooth deal, as a professional, we have to make it work.
I can't drill down on that enough because I'm going to tell you that negotiating is such a key piece of this business. I know a lot of people that are saying, well, I'm going to save myself some real estate fees. I'm going to just do it myself. But the emotion, it helps when you have a professional realtor who can help you negotiate. It helps remove that emotion and make it more steady of an approach, and sometimes gets a better result that way.
Yeah.
How do you differentiate yourself with that? Because I mean, there are a lot of professionals out there, and there's a lot of realtors out there, and many times they don't understand how to differentiate. How would you differentiate yourself?
Yeah, I mean, one of the ways that we I differentiate myself is actually be alert and be on top of the market situation. So every day I do what's called a net sheet, a hot sheet for the real estate market, knowing the trends, what the real estate market is doing, finding out is it a buyer's market, seller's market, or in between. And when a client is coming to me and saying, "Hey, I'm interested in buying a property," obviously I explain them, I set the expectation to the buyer by saying, listen, if you really want this home, this is what it's going to take. And so those are the things that actually makes me separate myself from other real estate agents out there.
So, what do you wish? I mean, this is a very ever evolving business right now, especially with what happened with the recent our National Association of Realtors
All right.
settlement. What do you wish more people from the public knew about the industry?
So, it's the thing that happened was that, and I'm going to go back a little bit. There was, when the market was doing great, there was a lot of agents that got into the business. And what happened was that those agents that came into the business, there were just what I call fill in the blanks. So, for example, a client would come in and says, I want to buy a house. And they would say, hey, if you want to buy this house, you're going to have to pay over asking price. You're not going to ask for home inspection. Okay. And so they would buy these properties, paying more for these properties, not knowing what's the issues with the properties. And then when it come time to sell, they found out that the agents that was representing them was not actually doing for their best interest. And that's what caused us to get to where we are today. That's why those people are starting to vase out and you're getting the professionals. See, during my time period when I was doing the real estate transactions, I never let a buyer buy a property without a home inspection. It didn't matter if there was 10, 15 offers on the table, because at the end of the day, those agents that did wrong to those customers are no longer having those customers. And what happens is there was a time where I was taught this. A farmer will take his time feeding his land and putting seeds on the ground, waiting it for to grow. But a hunter always had to go out and try to catch a new deer. So there was a difference between that,
Mm-hmm.
because when you farm, you had food for the entire year.
Right.
When you're a
Mm-hmm.
hunter, you had to go and try to get another deer every single time to feed your table.
Right.
So the bottom of the line story is that when you actually sit there and say, if I take care of my client throughout the whole process, my business will continue to grow, as opposed to the other type of agents, which we call it transactional agents. They're always looking for a new transaction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's a great segue into the next conversation, because when you're working with people that you're trying to build relationships with and you're trying to treat them like family, like you mentioned earlier, there's always, it seems like in every single transaction, there's at least one point where you're facing a challenge. What's one of the biggest challenges you faced in a negotiation, and how did you overcome it?
So one of the biggest challenges that we face is actually appraisal. When the property does not appraise, and the seller doesn't agree with the appraised value. Obviously, we're going through one of these right now. How do we convince the buyer and seller to come to a meeting of the mind? And basically, it's having the conversation with the buyer and seller and explaining them to the situation and say, listen, we're a few days from closing. We've got buyers already gone through the whole process. And we all want to expect to get that cloud price. And the reality is this market that we are in today is not that cloud price. So in order to move to the next step, we're going to have to negotiate and be able to supersede that appraised value and say, we believe that if we were to come to this price, that you will be able to be satisfied, because you're going to be able to build that equity in the next few years. Now, the only way we do that is by knowing that in the next few years that home prices are going to continue to grow. And so as long as the buyer is able to come up with the additional funds and pay slightly above appraised value, and the seller is willing to come down to what the buyer and the seller agrees in price, then we can move forward. So yeah, appraisal seems to be the most challenging part. Sometimes we can negotiate an inspection period as well, but that seems to be the most challenging part. And we have not have a lot of appraisal situations, but they do come around. And
Hmm.
the hardest part is trying to convince the buyer or seller, convince the seller to come down to the appraised value. So
So how do you? Cause that's a great point. Is you're dealing with a stressful situation right now because the seller is asking the buyer to come up beyond what the bank's value is on the home, and you're talking to the seller and telling them you got to get realistic and drop the price because nobody else is going to buy it for that. How do you, if you were on, in this case, the seller side, how would you handle that difficult conversation with that client? Because they're going to be
so
highly emotional. This house means a lot
correct.
to them.
Correct. So the most challenging part is how do we convince the seller? Um, is basically finding out what attachment the seller has to this property. Is it a property that he lived in for a very long period of time? Is it investment property that he put in too much money into it?
Hmm.
You know, or is it a property that belongs to a family member that he's selling? So the scenarios are different for every type of situation, but let's take one of those situations as an example. If he's an investor and he over improved the property and he knows that he needs to cash out in order to buy another property,
Hmm.
sometimes those investors, if you can explain it to them, and nobody wants to take a loss, but sometimes you say, hey, if I take a little bit of loss here, I will gain it on another property.
Hmm.
If it's a property where it's an inheritance
Hmm.
and they're trying to sell it and the market is actually slow, we have a deal on the table. We're only a few days to closing. Do we want to start all over? The property might be paid for, might not have a mortgage on it. But the question is, how soon do you need that cash?
Right.
And so
Hmm.
every scenario is different. So if you can figure out by digging deeper into the situation of the seller and find out exactly what their motivations are, we can come up to an agreement with that.
That's great. That's great. So now just shift a little bit and talk about, you've been in this business since 2010. That's, you got to see the roller coaster
Exactly.
of,
15
of the
years.
crash, and then you got to see the highs as the market inclined, and it was seeming like it was never going to end.
Yeah.
And then now it's kind of stabilized, especially in the Florida market. We're seeing a little bit of a correction right now. What was the best piece of advice that you've received during that time from somebody in your career?
Well, the best thing I actually received in my advice is actually both you and I. We're with the coaching of Brian Buffini with Buffini and Company. We've been in a steady climb, right? In the last 10 years to 15 years, it's been a steady climb. So right now we're reaching to a plateau where, the difference is that interest rates are higher when they used to, they're around 6.8, I believe. They used to be at 3%, 4%. Trying to explain to the buyers that we're not coming down on those prices. The other thing is the price of homes. Um, they have been on a steady climb, but now we reached to a plateau. When I last time saw the statistic, it's still going up 3%. The price
Hmm.
is not coming down. There's a lot of talks and stuff being said on the social media that there's going to be foreclosures and there's going to be a crash. Guys, that's not happening. Okay. Especially in the Florida market, I can tell you this. There's a lot of things that the governor of Florida is trying to do, such as been talks about removing property tax. Um, but the other thing is, people are moving to Florida. If I go around and see how much new constructions is taking place, how much rental apartment buildings are coming into place, the new constructions are still, in place. And in our Brevard County, Melbourne market, um, we're still seeing a substantial growth. The question is, why do we seeing those growth? We're seeing those growth because we're in an engineering town. We have large companies such as Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, Boeing. We have SpaceX, Blue Origin. These guys, they hire 25, 4,000 employees. And you got to imagine, they got to have a place to stay. So we're seeing that. And so what happens is, because there's still a demand of people looking to buy homes, we don't see those prices of homes coming down.
So your best is the best advice is kind of just stay steady at the hand. Then, is that what I'm
Yeah,
hearing?
so right now, my best advice to any buyers or seller is, right now is the time for you to actually be
Mm-hmm.
looking to purchase a home. And the reason why that is because interest rates are going to be stable, almost the same as what we have now. And home prices are going to continue. So what you don't pay for today, you're going to be paying for it more. And when interest rate actually comes down, which we expect it to come down not more than below 5.8% in the next year or two. Um, what we're going to find out is, you're going to get a rush of buyers going in and going into multiple bid situation. You're going to be paying more for a home in the next year or so than you could today. So best advice is, buy now and refinance when you see the interest rate drop.
So looking ahead to what we have and what's coming up in the future, what's the most exciting piece that you're excited about with real estate right now?
So my most exciting piece about real estate right now is, there's still going to be a substantial growth. We're going to see a lot of real estate agents that are going to phase out. You're going to see a lot of brokerages merging together.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing that happening.
That's great.
So with that being said, I know for a fact that I'm working with one of the best um, franchise broker. I'm seeing my business grow. And so I see that, real estate is a essential business where people always need a roof over their head. And so we're here for the long run.
Well, that's great. So if you had ultimate resources and you were able to provide the best client experience, what would you do? What would be your method?
So my thing is that when a client is buying a property, is to make sure that it's not that they're just buying a property. It's about they're buying a lifestyle, and also buying a location that they enjoy living in, right? So one thing is that I listen to my customers, and they basically say, "Hey, I want to live close to the golf course. I want to live close to the beach." And so they find this property, and when they find this property, they say, "Well, I need to fix a lot about the property." So one of the things is, I have an exclusive vendor list that I provide to my clients. And those are exclusive vendor lists are people that I've seen them do the work. I know that they're very professional at what they're doing. And so they know that they're going to get a vendor list of potential uh, vendors that are tradesmen, I should say, that are actually going to help them do the work and not get ripped off about the job that they're
That's
doing.
great. That's great.
Yeah.
So now, as you wrap it up today, and we just finished the conversation, what would be one final piece of advice that you would give to one of your future customers?
Well, bottom line is that the best advice I can give you is, real estate is where you build the most wealth in the United States. So, from my experience, I have found out that the more real estate property I own, the more wealth I can build. And there was always a saying that says, make money while you sleep. And real estate is the way to do it, real estate investment.
That's a fantastic thing. Well, man, that's great nuggets today.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that today with us. And
Yeah.
Randy Neuman, right here in Brevard County, if you're interested and you're moving to the beach, the Space Coast.
That's
If you're
right.
moving to the Space Coast, you're looking anywhere in Cocoa Beach, Indian Harbor Beach, Satellite Beach, or anywhere in Brevard County. Randy can help you. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thank
It
you,
was so
Chris.
glad to have
Appreciate
you
it. It's
here.
always a pleasure working with you. And
Likewise.
if you ever need to find a great loan officer, Chris Parks with Atlantic Coast Mortgage, he makes sure that all your deals work through. We've been working together for a very long time. And right now we've got quite a few deals closing, and
Yeah.
they're all smooth. Financial is always on top of it, always keeping you, in line and checked, and making sure that your customer is going through a smooth transaction. So thank you very much,
I
Chris.
didn't pay for that, but I do appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right.